Welcome to the Michigan Association of Secondary School Principals New and Improved podcast series featuring great discussions, insight, and resources on all things related to education and administration. Welcome back to the MASSP podcast. I am here with Tammy Jackson today, Associate Director of MASSP, and Tammy and I are going to talk about the May checklist. So Tammy, first of all, how's your day?
It's been a great day, Theresa. As a matter of fact, I've heard from several principals, and it's reminded me just how difficult the job is to be a principal in that last month of school. And my day's been great because I've only had to hear the stories.
Yeah, it is definitely a different month, and we're halfway through it right now. It's May 15th. We have exactly 1 month to the last day of school. I imagine I can't be the only one in that boat. So we've got a month left to make a difference and get everything finished. And with that, we can use this handy dandy May checklist that we've got. So as a reminder, as a continuation of the principal checklist series, every month we pull the checklist that MASSP puts together and add a podcast to it. We put in monthly to-dos that have to do with, well, this one is ending strong, student exit interviews, new teacher meetings, but it's all great things, HR reminders, athletics, professional duties, things that we need to remember to do that sometimes we just don't. And the principal checklists have gone through quite an update lately. We talked about it when we did the April checklist, but they're all PDF now. They're editable to add who they're assigned to, the due dates, checking them off when you're done. So they're really, really helpful. Make sure that you're grabbing these. As a member, you have them free in your membership, and they're sent out every month with the newsletter, and they're also available on the website. So the last time we spoke, Tammy, we talked about the April checklist and an end of the year checklist that was all things human resources. Talking about the May checklist, there is a lot on here that is not human resources.
That's for sure, Theresa. So what I've done is I've just pulled some of the most important parts of the checklist out, knowing that it's lots of stuff that we're just not going to be able to talk about today. So like you, I just encourage principals to make sure they're taking a look at that checklist and being reminded of the things that pertain particularly to them. But I am going to pull a few things out that I think all principals at all levels are probably dealing with.
Perfect.
So we ended our talk last time about scheduling. We were talking about how in April it's so important to start the process of scheduling. And while all the heavy lifting has probably been done for scheduling, in some ways the most important work is probably yet to be done. And that really deals with assigning staff to courses and making sure that you have the right people in the right places. Just remind principals that it's important to make sure that you are putting teachers in the areas they are certified in and making sure that you balance that load amongst your teachers. But this is the time to consider the things that didn't go well this year with courses and teachers and making sure you take advantage of making changes where it will make things better.
Wonderful. I'm looking at this first, the monthly to-dos with the teacher schedules, student schedules, locker clean out.
Yes.
That's a huge one. And I think I don't know about how it was when you were a principal in your own building, but I feel like it always catches me by surprise.
You know, it does. And I did actually pull that event out, and really one of the things that I think is so important to do is to plan for it so that it's a purposeful event. It runs better when you actually say, at this time, this group of students are going to clean out these lockers. And then you can actually go one step farther and you can say, this group of students are assigned to these teachers or these staff members, and these staff members are going to inspect these lockers when these kids clean them out. And when you take the time to do that, your building is left in a condition that is so much better than if it happens by accident.
Absolutely. Every time, making sure that the kids are there. It's helpful to have Power School or whatever your student information system is too, because a lot of students don't use their lockers anymore. So they don't remember their combinations.
That's very true. Or a master key, people with a master key that can make that process simple. But I do believe that students treat their lockers better and make sure they're cleaned out thoroughly when they know it's going to be inspected by somebody when they're done.
Agreed. Looking at ending the year strong, department chairs and teacher leaders.
You know, one of the things that we recommend on our checklist is that principals pull together those key people in all of your clubs and organizations, or maybe task groups or PLC groups, and just sit down with them and go through a debriefing process about how the year went. And then to set your expectations for goal setting for the next year. It's so much easier to do when the year is fresh in your mind. It seems like when you wait to do that till the fall, you sort of start out and sort of have forgotten all the pains that occurred the prior year, and therefore don't address them to make improvements.
How about you and I were just actually talking about this before we started recording. How about eighth graders and or seniors' last days?
Wow, that is such an exciting time of year. And while I do recognize the stress that it causes, I also remember how much joy there was surrounding the end of the year for seniors and for eighth graders as well, who are often coming into the high school building the next year. Again, it's just something that can't happen by accident. It has to be purposeful. You've got to make sure you've got the right people in the right places for supervision. The expectation of how students need to behave has to be incredibly clear. And when it is, things will go much smoother.
And remembering too that especially for the seniors, this is the last thing that they'll remember when they're leaving your building. So making it, even if it's not a super special send-off, making it a happy occasion for them, and remembering that, you know, this is their home and a place that they've spent quite a few years and a lot of their life the last little bit. While it's stressful for us, this is something that they'll always remember.
Absolutely, it is. And when you plan to do that, actually seniors will feel really great about that, and their behavior will be better just because you're honoring them. And that's always the best way to manage behavior. You know, another thing that that we think about at the end of the year is just being ready for the celebrations that occur. And while at this time in the middle of May, many of those celebrations have occurred, there are often key celebrations that are left. And so one of the pieces of advice I would give principals at this point is whatever you have left between now and the end of the year, whatever formal things, plan to get together with all the stakeholders involved and just go over those events, make sure everybody knows what they're doing. It'll just make your life a lot easier when you know what's going on. And it also makes your life easier when you show up early for those events and just check things out for yourself and make sure everything's in order. And that includes the commencement ceremony and really any other celebration that might occur between now and the end of the year.
Yeah, that can't be understated. There are so many moving parts. So the more people who are on the same page, the better off it'll be for you.
Absolutely. And again, it just comes down to you're only one person and you have to rely on your team. But your team has to be informed of what you want out of them in order to be prepared to help you.
So looking at upcoming PD opportunities, there's a new teacher meeting topic and mentor teacher checklist that is on here, and there's a link to that as well. But then upcoming PD opportunities. So there's at mymassp.com/event list. There is a list of upcoming PD that MASSP is offering. Do you want to talk a little bit about what those look like?
Absolutely. I really recommend for teachers and administrators at the middle level to get themselves scheduled to go to one of the PSAT 8-9 sessions. I've been a part of delivering that information now for the past couple of months, and I can't tell you how appreciative and informed the people are that come to that. You can talk to anybody that's been to that. That is an outstanding training that will benefit their knowledge from just in preparation of PSAT 8-9 for next year. We also have the EdCon, of course, our yearly conference for principals, middle level and high school principals in Traverse City, June 25th through 27th. It's filled this year with unbelievable sessions. So I would recommend John Gordon, one of the keynote speakers. If you haven't made your reservations for that, I certainly would do that as soon as you can.
I second that. I know George Kouros and I have worked together on a couple of things in the past, and he's also keynoting, and I cannot wait for anyone in Michigan who's not heard him speak. It's going to be great. Just what I've heard, it's going to be fantastic. So absolutely make your reservations, get yourself registered, and make sure that you have that on your calendar.
Absolutely.
So there's a staff icebreaker, which I love.
Yeah, it's kind of a fun icebreaker. It has a little physical aspect to it, and I don't think it's for everybody. I think you have to make sure that your staff is comfortable with that. But I think anytime you plan for any team building or ice breaking with your staff, I think that it starts out a professional development or a meeting on the right note. So I think it's good to plan those events in there.
Absolutely. And I think the movement ones are pretty good for May because we're all a little squirrely at this point. So the more we can get people up and moving, the better off we're all going to be.
Especially at the end of the day. There's some other tips that I'd like to throw out there just quickly for principals at the end of the year, some things to consider if you're already not doing them. And one of them is it's so important this time of year to keep that academic culture right until the last day. That doesn't mean you can't have fun, but if we start letting our guard down too much in mid-May, the last month of school can turn into a real circus, so to speak. And so one of the things I recommend for principals is to make sure that you dress professionally right up to that last day of school, and expect that of your staff members as well. And that will send a strong signal that school is not over. We still have plenty of academic time left.
How do you feel in relation to that? I know this is always a sore topic for a lot of people because there are differing views. How do you feel about tearing classrooms down before the last day of school?
Well, I think that whenever we send the message to our students that we're done, that is the message that they hear, and in their minds they're done as well. And we can't afford to be done with academics this early in the school year. And so I think that if you're going to do any tearing down of your classroom, I think you need to do it in a time when students aren't noticing, and you need to be rearranging it so that even though things are different, it's still academic.
Yep, I agree. It's a tough thing to try to get focus when there's nothing left on the walls and covers over the bulletin boards, etc. I think that's a tough thing to move forward from. It's hard enough at the high school level when the seniors leave, because you've got portions of your class missing, but then having, that on top of it, I think is a little more difficult.
Right. And the principal sets that tone. So the principal's behavior has to say that school's not over yet. And they have to continue to do the things they did all year and have the expectations that they had right up until the very end.
Yeah, we struggle so much with time, and we always talk about how there's not enough time. And although it can be really tough to have a lot of focus toward the end of the year, this is a lot of time that we would lose.
Right. And it's probably one of the most important times of the year to have a lot of focus, actually.
Absolutely.
And it's also a really important time of the year to make sure that as a principal building leader, you are taking care of yourself. So it's not a good time to be too busy to take care of yourself, to, exercise, eat properly, get your sleep. I think you really have to fight for those things because you have to keep your head in the game right till the very end.
That's a great point. I think we actually had a conversation on a podcast that I do. One of the principals is a principal in New Jersey, and he studies a lot of mindfulness. And one of his techniques is called grounding. And it's literally when you go outside and you take your shoes off and your feet are in the grass, there's just something calming, and it just brings you back just by grounding yourself. So it's little things like that. If you're outside on recess duty, take your shoes off for a couple minutes, relax, and just enjoy the sun, enjoy the kids. But you're right. Have some time for you. Sit outside after work one day and breathe in the beautiful spring air now that it's finally here.
Right. And also work with your family. It's a tough time of year to be a family of a principal or be in the family of a principal. And so I think it's a good time to have a sit down talk with your own family and say, this is what the end of the year is looking like, but this is what we have to look forward to. And maybe put something on the calendar that you'll all look forward to as soon as you can catch a break.
Great tip. I love that so much. So along with the end of the year comes some big HR reminders.
Absolutely. Because of the competitiveness of hiring right now, I can tell you that a lot of the interviewing is going on right now. There was time when our practice was to wait till school was out, but I think that that's all occurring right now while school is in session. So, you have to be mindful of when you're interviewing, of course, that knowing that people are probably working. And so you have to make sure that you aren't taking them away from their jobs. You certainly don't want to be excusing your teachers to go to interviews. But the other, important work to do in the HR area is, of course, wrapping up those evaluations and those ratings and meeting all those deadlines and informing your teachers in a respectful manner that they deserve how their evaluation has ended.
These are great tips, all of them. Thank you. And be sure that you check out the principal's checklist on my MASSP for all the rest of the tips that we didn't go through one by one, but there are a ton on there. And unfortunately in May, they're all necessary and more. So be sure to grab that so you don't forget something that you might really need. I was sending a message to one of our other APs the other day, and I kept asking him if there was anything I could do for him. And he said, "Why are you doing this? Why do you keep asking me if there's anything you can do?" And I said, "Because I feel like I'm forgetting something, and I have this pit in my stomach that I'm forgetting something, and it's going to be a huge problem." He's like,
Theresa, those are some of the most powerful words you can say when you are an administrator, and that's "what can I do for you?" So even though you're probably one of the busiest people in the building right now, you need to remember to say that to your teachers and to your coworkers and to your secretarial staff. What can I do for you? Because when you say those things to people, in return, they're going to be thinking, but what can I do for you?
Yeah, absolutely. And we have to remember that as stressed as we are, the teachers are stressed, the secretaries are stressed, everybody has a deadline, and it's the last day of school, and it's stressful and it's hard, and everyone is kind of in their breaking point right now. So, remember that a little extra grace will take you a long way in May.
Absolutely, it will, Theresa, and I'm glad that you feel that way as well.
Thank you. Thinking about the checklist, and Tammy, you were an administrator in a high school for 18 and a half years. Is that right?
Well, I was an administrator for closer to 27 years, but a principal for the last 18, 19 years.
Knowing that, what other advice that's maybe not on the checklist can you offer other administrators as they're going through May, which right now, as we record this, it's the second week of AP testing. My building, we are 2.5 weeks away from graduation. There's baccalaureate, awards, banquets, scheduling. What else can you offer us, Tammy?
I think one of the things that I would like to remind principals of is that even though this is your work, it's your job, many of the events that you're responsible for are the first time for our students and their parents. So as difficult as it is to plan a commencement, for example, just remember that that is the only time that student will graduate, and it's the only time that parent will watch them graduate. So you have to find joy in those events on their behalf. And sometimes you have to remind yourself of that. Sometimes it's a little bit fake, quite honestly, but sometimes you have to fake it till you make it, so that you make all those events important to those students that you serve.
And you know what, Tammy, that is so huge, because it's not only the first or the only. For some of them, it might be the last. And those are big things too.
It's an incredibly emotional time of year for a parent. And I don't know if it's more emotional when it's your first or when it's your last. Yeah. I think it's emotional for them in every case. And I think that we need to just remember to honor that. And I always used to say, it's not about me. It's not about me. Because if it was, it would look very different than it
Right. Yeah, but there's something so fulfilling about seeing them all sitting in their chairs, the last, walking across the stage and getting their diplomas. And if you're a principal who's around and with the students, their special stories and their struggles that they've had. And if you can pull yourself back to that, it'll put you in a really great place to finish out the year.
That's exactly right. You have to find the joy in those events on their behalf. Mm-hmm.
So thank you again for an amazing podcast and for this beautiful checklist. These are so helpful. Coming up, we've got some great podcasts. We're actually going to podcast live at EdCon, which will be very exciting. So if you are at EdCon, we're going to search you out, and we're going to be asking for some wisdom. We have some tricks up our sleeve, Ryan and I do, and we're looking forward to that. And we've got some good stuff coming for you through the summer. So make sure that you subscribe on iTunes, listen up, download the checklists as they're coming out. And thank you for listening. Have a great week. Bye, Tammy.
Bye-bye. See you later.